There's a lot of information on the internet regarding grief. You can find information about the loss of a parent, the loss of a sibling, the loss of a pet, but there's not a lot of information out there regarding the loss of a service dog. I had my first grand mal seizure back in 2014 and was diagnosed with epilepsy shortly after that. The moment that I received my diagnosis, my life changed. I didn't grow up with seizures, so I didn't know what a life with having them would look like. I couldn't drive anymore, so I dropped out of college. I withdrew from any semblance of a social life. But that was a time of overwhelming loneliness that I had not experienced before. And I discovered that dogs could be trained to mitigate life with seizures. So I contacted Service Dogs Alabama and talked to them about their program, and they encouraged me to apply to be a client. And after submitting an application with so many doctor's notes and referrals and waiting about a year, I was matched with Earl. You'd think it would be intuitive handling a service dog, but Earl wasn't a pet, and he certainly wasn't like any normal dog. I think I called Service Dogs Alabama every other day for a month just to ask what I was doing wrong. He was perfectly trained, but he had this stink face. He was only 1.5, but he acted like a crotchety old man. I was devastated that I couldn't seem to get him excited or happy about anything. The trainers told me that that's just who Earl was. Even as a puppy, he had this really serious demeanor. They explained that it was a working relationship and that we would have to take some time to get to know each other. So we took things slow and eventually we just fell in love. Earl became like an appendage. He went everywhere with me, and he never failed to respond when I collapsed. He went with me to weddings, to the grocery store, to doctor's appointments, to jury duty. We gave speeches to large groups about service dogs. He was a perfect travel buddy. I finally re-enrolled in college and made friends because everyone wanted to get to know him. I gained so much confidence, not only in my ability to re-enter society, but I generally became a more outgoing person. I'm pretty sure most of my friends loved him even more than they loved me. We were a we. It wasn't a Mary Ryan and her service dog thing, but we were a collective. He was a medical device, sure, but he was also like a child and a caretaker, a protector, a hype man, and a best friend. And then, just like I was after my epilepsy diagnosis, suddenly Earl wasn't himself. The grief of losing him was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. First, I mourned the loss of my best friend and caretaker. A few days later, I realized I no longer felt comfortable going out in public alone, so I mourned the loss of my independence and security. I felt halved, like this huge piece of me was just gone. And then I realized, oh my gosh, I have this whole community to break the news to. He meant so much to so many people, and I have to be strong enough to talk about him with these people who loved him like I did. You have to mourn with this whole village of people who knew and loved him. I couldn't bear to call my friends who knew and loved him, so I made a post about his passing on social media. I thought when I received his ashes that I would restart the grieving process all over again, but I felt like we were finally reunited in a way. Don't get me wrong, I cried for hours when I picked them up, but it was this sense of relief to have him with me again. My house is basically a shrine to him. I had his vest and collar mounted in a shadow box, and I have a portrait of him in the kitchen so that he can always watch me while I'm cooking. Like a typical lab, he wanted to taste everything I ate. It seemed only appropriate to mount his picture there. Earl gave me my life back. He gave my life meaning again just by being who he was. And I pray that in sharing my mourning process and crying on camera and revealing the weird forms my grief has taken, that I'm returning that favor.